Chapter 13. Helen Sandberg stood by the control room window staring at the plane. "Come on," she said. "Why is that door shut? Where are the passengers?" "The hijackers won't set them free," said Inspector Home. "I told you, Prime Minister. This is a serious mistake." "Be quiet, man," said Colonel Carter. "I think we've got something on the radio." Beside him, a soldier was turning the controls of a small army radio. Suddenly the voices of one of the hijackers and the prisoner came into the room. "So, how many soldiers are there in the airport building, my brother?" "I didn't see any soldiers, only police." "That's strange. No soldiers at all?" "I did not see any, brother." "Very strange. But these are not military people. They do not have many soldiers. Perhaps the woman will do what she says, then." "What's happening, Colonel?" Helen asked. "Those are the hijackers' voices. How can we hear them?" The Colonel laughed. "Well, madam, you can see it's raining, can't you? We didn't want our poor prisoner to get wet, so we gave him a nice yellow raincoat, you see. But it was an expensive raincoat, because one of its buttons is a small radio transmitter, so now we can hear everything they say, and we know where they are on the plane." Helen smiled. "Good idea, Colonel. I hope it helps." "Prime Minister," Michael interrupted. "They're coming." Helen looked through the window. The door of the plane was open, and people were coming down the steps one after another. Some of them started to run towards the airport building, and a few knelt down on the wet tarmac. "What are they doing?" Helen asked. "Praying, perhaps," said Michael. "To thank God that they're alive." Police and doctors came out of the building to help the passengers. Helen stood and watched through the binoculars. She did not see Carl. 99, 100. "That's it, then," said Colonel Carter. The plane door closed. "Now we move on to the next step of our plan. Goodbye, Prime Minister." Helen turned and saw that the Colonel was putting on white clothes on top of his army uniform. He put several grenades in the coat pocket and a machine gun into a long pocket inside the coat. He smiled at her. "I must help my men refuel the plane." "May God go with you, Colonel," she said. Chapter 14. The lights in the plane went out again. There were only 11 of them left now. Carl Sandberg and Harold, 4 crew and 5 Americans. They sat together in the middle of the plane. The girl and the young man in the black shirt watched them. Through the window, Carl saw the fuel tanker drive towards the plane. It stopped, and 5 men in white clothes got out. The pilot went to the front of the plane to work the controls, and the men started to refuel the plane. Then he saw another man in a yellow raincoat come out of the airport building. The bearded hijacker started to talk very excitedly. "Is it him?" "Yes, it is. Our leader. My brother and sister, we have done it. Now I must welcome him at the door. You, brother, watch the pilot in the cabin, and sister, watch the passengers." Carl Sandberg watched the man in the yellow coat walk nearer. He could only see one man at the back of the plane refueling it. He thought the others were under the plane somewhere, but he did not know where. Harold put his hand on Carl's arm. Carl looked at him. Harold did not speak, but he was looking at the girl very carefully. As the door opened and the man with the yellow coat came in, the girl turned to look. Through the window, Carl saw a man in a white coat run out from under the plane with something that looked like a grenade in his hand. 2 other men in white ran out behind him. The man's arm went up, and he threw the grenade through the open door. There was a very loud bang at the front of the plane, and a flash of white light that burnt Karl's eyes. Almost immediately, there was an even louder bang, bang, and 2 more flashes of white light. Karl could not move. The noise was so loud and the light so bright that he sat still as a stone. He saw the girl hijacker and the bearded man standing quite still too, with their guns in their hands and their mouths open. Then a man in white ran through the door with a gun in his hand. He shot the girl and the bearded man before they could move. The hijacker in the black shirt came out of the captain's cabin behind the man in white, but 2 other men in white came through the door and shot him too. The 2 prisoners in their yellow raincoats tried to get to the door, but the men in white knocked them to the floor and handcuffed their hands behind their backs. Karl looked down. The girl was lying on the floor of the aisle beside him. He thought he saw her hand move towards her machine gun, but then one of the soldiers in white ran down the aisle and shot her again through the head. Another soldier pulled her away by her legs, and her long hair left blood along the floor. Chapter 15. Helen Sandberg heard the bangs too, and when she saw the white light, she thought the plane was burning. For about half a minute there was nothing but loud bangs and white flashes, and then there was nothing. There were no lights at all in the plane, and no sounds either. She turned to Michael. "Can't you get them on the radio?" "I'm trying, Prime Minister, but I think it's broken." She walked to the door. "I'm going out." Inspector Holmes stood in front of her. "You must not do that, Prime Minister. We don't know what's happened." "That's why I'm going," she said. "I'm going to find out. I don't care what happens to me." He was a big man, but he was afraid of her. She walked straight past him and down the steps. In the departure lounge there was a crowd of passengers waiting to get on other planes, and also a lot of doctors, police, and newspaper journalists. She walked straight past them all and out onto the tarmac. It was dark and cold, and the wind blew rain into her face. When she was about 50 meters away from the building, she heard some people behind her, but she did not stop. The door of the plane opened, and a man in white came out. He had a gun in his hand, and he came backwards down the steps. After him came 2 men in yellow raincoats, with their hands behind their backs, and then 2 other men in white, with guns. 2 police officers came after her. "Wait, Prime Minister," they said. "Please stop, it's dangerous." "Not now," she said. "It's not dangerous any more." She walked on through the rain without stopping, and the young police officers walked beside her. They were afraid to touch her, and they did not know what to do. Some journalists ran after them. 2 men in blue came out of the plane, the pilot and co-pilot. Then some men in suits. She was quite near the plane now, and there were quite a lot of newspaper photographers around her, but she did not stop walking. A big young man came out of the plane with a short, thin, grey-haired one. Harold and Karl. Helen could see that Karl's face was very white, and there was blood on his mouth, but he could walk all right. Karl saw her coming, a small, strong figure walking through the rain, with a crowd of police and photographers around her. "Harold, my friend," he said, "I think we're in the news again. You're going to have another photo to show your little son on his birthday." Karl and Helen Sandberg met at the bottom of the steps, in the darkness and the rain. And Karl was right. There was a photo of it in every newspaper in the world the next day.